Speculation about history can be fun, but what happens when a mystery doesn't have an answer? When it's been around for a long time and yet no answer has been found? There are many mysteries from the Middle Ages that are still unsolved. Let's take a look at some of them. Number 1. Where did the two princes in the tower go? The two sons of King Edward IV of England, Edward and Richard, were confined in the Tower of London by their uncle, the Duke of Gloucester, after their father's death in 1483. They were lodged there purportedly for their safety as the War of the Roses raged in England. As the regent for the new King Edward V, the Duke soon had both boys declared illegitimate and took the throne as his own, becoming Richard III. The exact details about what happened to Edward and Richard, ages 12 and 9, respectively, have never been clear. Once the princes were ensconced in Tower of London, neither was ever seen again. At the time, observers noted, withdrawn to the inner apartments of the tower proper, and day by day began to be seen more rarely behind the bars and windows until at length they ceased to appear altogether. Already there is a suspicion that they have been done away with. There's widespread speculation that the newly crowned King Richard III had the princes murdered to secure his position. Assertions that the boys escaped led to rumors that they fled to continental Europe, perpetuated by men like Perkin Warbeck, who claimed to be young Richard during the 1490s. When Sir Thomas More wrote about the event during the early 16th century, he described the deaths of the boys at the order of Richard III. The innocent children lying in their beds, Miles Forrest and John Dighton, about midnight, came into the chamber and suddenly lapped them up among the clothes, so bewrapped them and entangled them, keeping down by force the feather bed and pillows hard unto their mouths. That within a while smothered and stifled, they gave up to God their innocent souls. Despite claims that Richard III had, in fact, ordered the deaths of his nephews, there was no proof. Some historians insist he had no real motive, and for centuries, researchers and archaeologists have looked for physical evidence of the boys' fate. Bones discovered at the Tower of London and St. George's Chapel, the burial site of King Edward IV, have yielded inconclusive findings, and requests for DNA tests have been denied by the Crown. Number 2. What was the dancing plague? In 1518, hundreds of residents of a town in the Holy Roman Empire started dancing, and didn't stop for 3 months. The so-called dancing plague seized Strasbourg through the summer months, with Frau Trophia being the first victim. She danced to exhaustion for days, bloodying and bruising her feet until eventually succumbing to her affliction. The dancing plague lasted from July to early September, at which point it subsided. Historians still wonder what the root cause was, but Strasbourg wasn't the only place it struck. Similar instances of dancing to death occurred in various parts of Germany, France, Holland, and Switzerland as early as 1374. At the time, the disorder was thought to be caused by hot blood, the devil, or a curse from Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers and entertainment. Other theories involve poison, spider bites, or a communal possession of sorts, bred in an environment of belief that some supernatural force was at large. Number 3. Who were the Green Children of Woolpit? According to William of Newburgh, a 12th century English chronicler, 2 children, a boy and a girl, appeared in Suffolk at some point during the reign of King Stephen from 1135 to 1154. The youngsters were completely green in their persons, and clad in garments of a strange color and unknown materials. Found by men out in their fields, the children were taken to the village of Woolpit and initially refused all food but raw beans. When they eventually began eating a better diet, Newburgh related that they changed their original color, and, with time, they became like ourselves, and also learned our language. When asked where they came from, the children said they were from the land of St. Martin, although they had no real idea where that was. They described their home as a place where the sun does not rise upon our countrymen. Our land is little cheered by its beams. We are contented with twilight, which, among you, precedes the sunrise, or follows sunset. Exactly who the Woolpit children were, if they ever existed, has puzzled historians and non-historians alike. Theories range from the youths having been poisoned or simply malnourished, although more outlandish ideas revolve around them being aliens. The most likely explanation is that they were the children of immigrants from Flanders who, at some point during the turbulent years of King Stephen's time on the throne, were orphaned. Animosity between the Flemish and English can be seen in the actions of Stephen's successor, Henry II. He targeted Flemish individuals living in England specifically, casting them out of England after he took the throne in 1154. Number 4. What's in the Voynich manuscript? The Voynich manuscript, named for Wilfrid Voynich, the bookseller who rediscovered it in 1912, was written during the 15th century. It includes undeciphered words and codes and an array of unusual images, all of which remain a mystery. Attempts to read and explain the manuscript's contents have been truly interdisciplinary in nature. Forensic specialists, historians, and cryptologists alike have tried to definitively explain the contents. Divided into 6 sections, the tome encompasses topics such as botanicals, astronomy, biology, cosmology, pharmaceuticals, and even recipes. Over time, researchers have identified Latin letters and Arabic numerals, but figures that look like aliens and strange flora and fauna continue to puzzle observers. Scholars like Egyptologist Rainer Hanig insist the manuscript is written in a language based on Hebrew, while Nicholas Gibbs claimed in 2017 that the document was a mix of copied and plagiarized information from ancient and medieval health manuals. Number 5. What was the recipe for Greek fire? As an incendiary weapon of choice for fighters in the Byzantine Empire, Greek fire was first used during the 670s. The flammable liquid burned on water, making it inextinguishable and highly effective in naval combat. While Greek fire wasn't the first such weapon used in history, the exact composition of the Byzantine version remains unknown. Called artificial fire, it was sprayed on enemy ships, bringing with it flames and smoke alike. Greek fire may have been a mixture of sulfur and quicklime or saltpeter, but historians continue to debate its true makeup. The Byzantines continued to use Greek fire, and they admittedly wanted to keep it a secret. Number 6. What happened to the Vikings in Greenland? During the mid-10th century, Norse settlers arrived on the island of Greenland. They stayed through roughly the middle of the 15th century, at which point they abandoned their settlements. Eric the Red was the first so-called king of Greenland, leading settlers to found 2 major communities on the island during the 980s and 990s. Eric also gave Greenland its name, a strategic moniker intended to make the cold, desolate location sound more appealing. The height of Viking presence saw thousands of Norsemen and women living there. They were farmers and hunters, seizing upon the availability of walrus tusks to succeed in the ivory trade as well. By the mid-14th century, the Viking population of Greenland declined and, by the mid-1400s, they were gone. It was widely thought the Norse left Greenland due to changes in climate. Warmer weather not only influenced survival on the island but made travel by sea more difficult. Coupled with already difficult conditions and natural disasters, some researchers believe many Vikings starved to death, perhaps because they couldn't adapt to their new surroundings. Geographer Jared Diamond and historian Thomas McGovern used to believe this, but they now think there was a much slow migration out of Greenland. McGovern also thinks some Vikings actually stayed and moved to other parts of Greenland, but ultimately lost their fight to survive. Number 7. What was John Cabot's fate? Italian explorer John Cabot, real name Giovanni Caboto, is credited with discovering Newfoundland and claiming Canada for England during the late 15th century. After landing in North America in 1497, Cabot went back to England and prepared for a second expedition. He set out in May 1498, hoping to make his way to Asia, but he disappeared on that voyage and nothing is known about his final days. For his second journey, Cabot had 5 ships and 300 men. One of his ships turned back near Ireland after a storm hit, and there's some speculation that Cabot may have been on board. It's more widely believed that he continued to head west and was later lost at sea. Some people believe, including researcher Alwyn Ruddock, that Cabot made it to the New World, stayed until 1500, and then went back to England. While Ruddock never published her findings, the Cabot Project at the University of Bristol has continued to prove them correct. The continued study has revealed evidence that Cabot sailed down the eastern coast of North America, accompanied by an Italian cleric who started a settlement there. Cabot's name also appears in documents dating to 1500 in London, indicating he may or may not have made another successful trip to the New World. Or, at the very least, was still alive in 1500. Number 8. Why was the Cerne Boss giant created? In 2021, researchers definitively dated the Cerne Boss giant, a 180-foot-tall chalk carving in Dorset, England, to the Middle Ages. Drawn between 700 and 1100, the giant was previously believed to have been created in prehistoric or ancient Britain, or during the post-medieval era. The exact time frame for the club-wielding, well-endowed figure's creation was a welcome, albeit surprising, finding. What remains unclear, however, is who drew it, and why. The period between 700 and 1100 is decidedly Anglo-Saxon, but there's still no agreement about the purpose for such a large hill figure. Local legends hold it's an outline drawing of an actual giant. As British archaeologist Martin Papworth explained, Cerne Abbey was founded in 987 years after Christ, and some sources think the abbey was set up to convert the locals from the worship of an early Anglo-Saxon god known as a Hyle, or Helith. The early part of our date range does invite the question, was the giant originally a depiction of that god? The more common theory is that the Cerne Boss giant is associated with fertility. During the Victorian era, visiting the site was believed to alleviate issues with infertility. Number 9. Where is Genghis Khan buried? Founder of the largest contiguous dynasty to have ever existed, Genghis Khan united Mongol tribes, led fierce conquests, and established functional meritocracy before his passing in 1227. While the exact cause of Genghis Khan's demise is unknown, perhaps the result of an injury or disease, his final resting place may have been intentionally hidden. By one account, he was reportedly buried right where he fell, but not with any temple or marker. Another theory holds that the soldiers comprising Genghis Khan's funeral party killed everyone they saw along the way and, once the leader's body was in the ground, obscured the site to maintain secrecy. The lack of knowing where Genghis Khan was buried has only spawned enthusiastic efforts to find it. Researchers have tried looking at texts, using satellite imagery, and traversing the landscape. In the words of one Mongolian resident named Yulin, if they'd wanted us to find it, they would have left some sign. Okay, friends, this was the end of this video. Hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe.